Hello everybody, and in this video I'm going to be showing two of the games that I played over the weekend at the Four Nations Chess League. This is played on, I think, 5 weekends in Birmingham, or just outside in Telford. And there's usually a team of 6 people playing another team of 6 people, and there's usually about 20 teams in all in a division. At the end of the season, like the Premier League or other football or sporting events, the top couple of teams in the division is promoted and the bottom couple are relegated. The team I was playing for was Barnet Knights. I was board 2 in both matches, and the time control is 100 minutes for the first 40 moves, then 50 minutes are added on to finish the game, and the entire game has a 30-second increment. So it's a very long time control, and games can go on for 6 hours or more. In the first game, I was white, playing against Sam Bentham. I started with c4, which is my usual move, and he played c5. What worried me about this beginning of the match was he was playing very, very quickly. So I played g3 and he copied with g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, knight c3, knight c6. So the thing about this league is that the fixtures of who's playing who in the league matches are put up about 2 hours before the actual game starts, and about an hour and a half before the individual members of the team board order is put up on the website and physically at the venue. So it's possible that you could find out who you're playing, work out what they've played in the past, and prepare for them 20 moves deep. Try and get an advantage early. So I was a little worried he had done this, but I played my usual knight f3. I feel that even if he has prepared, I do know what to play in this opening, so I won't be too taken aback. And he played e5, so it's possible that he's trying to establish a Botvinnik setup as black. Castles, knight g to e7, and here what I want to do is bring my knight to d5. I've got the c3 knight ready to jump in, but the f3 knight is not able to do that. So I reroute it, e1, d6, c2, and here, this is the difference in openings between white and black. If white had done this and black had the position that white does, then white would be able to, or black, in this position it's black, would be able to get in d5 or d4 if colours were reversed. But here, if he tries to play bishop e6 and then push d5, I have knight to e3, and I'm just in time to stop d5 because I have more pieces on it. Takes, 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 takes. And if the queen takes, I take with the bishop. So black doesn't quite have enough time to get in the d5 break. Instead, after knight c2, he castled, and I play knight e3 anyway. f5, so it's quite thematic getting in an f5 break. And before playing knight e3 to d5, I just play d3. It defends c4, it targets the e4 square so that black can't play e4. And also, I now have options involving moving my bishop on c1 out to g5 or even h6 if I had a queen protecting it. So rook b8, again quite thematic for black, just to get the rook off the long diagonal and prepare the b pawn running up the board. So I jump into d5, bishop e6, and now I play rook b1. So I'm mirroring black because I don't really want black to be able to just have a queenside initiative. I want to fight for the initiative. If a6, I can play a4, preventing b5, and because I'm going to have a knight on d5, that's protecting the b4 square, so I may be able to play b4 myself. Knight b4 is played, and here I just develop with bishop g5. So it's an interesting position. I've got this annoying pin, so he takes my knight, and I recapture with my knight. And here, a rather bizarre move was played by him. I was expecting bishop takes check, king h8, and now I can maybe retreat the bishop to prevent knight takes bishop in the future. Queen c7, stepping out of the pin, a3, and I can prepare b4. Mainly because as I have the two bishops, I want to open up the game and make there be a lot of space for me to move around and maneuver my pieces. If it's all very closed up, the knight is going to be at least as good as my bishop, if not better. So I was expecting this kind of position where I'm quite comfortable as white, but there's still a game to be had. However, after I played knight takes d5, he played rook f7. Rather strange move. And I can win the exchange with knight takes e7 check, rook takes, and bishop takes. But first, I just thought I'd play b4, because his knight's not going anywhere, and it allows me to open up the game. If bishop takes d5, I now have bishop takes d5, pinning his rook, so I'll still win the exchange. Now, there was a move I had thought was interesting, which was bishop f8, just stopping himself losing the exchange. But I felt like I had plenty of play with taking first and then playing f4, threatening the pawn, f takes, bishop takes, hitting his rook, rook c8, knight takes check, queen takes, rook takes b7, queen f6, and maybe just try to swap off queens. So I'm going to be a clear pawn up after everything has been exchanged. And this might just be more secure than just winning the exchange earlier. Now, being a pawn up with a better position, a good initiative, I feel like it's very easy to win. Whereas being the exchange up could be tricky in some positions. But going back to the game, he didn't play bishop f8, he actually played h6. So now I do need to take on e7 with the bishop. Takes, takes, takes. And here now I'm the exchange up again, but he has the two bishops, which could be annoying in the future. So I just get the queen out and hit the a7 pawn, as that's the main threat. Also, I have pawn takes pawn coming up, unleashing my rook on the b file. So he plays b6, defending laterally with the queen on a7. Takes, and d takes is forced. Queen c6, infiltrating. Rook c8, and here, can you see how white can swap off pieces? Queen takes e6 check. And to my very great surprise, he resigned in this position. I'd play on as black. I'd analysed the position after queen takes e6, bishop d5, takes, takes, get the king active, and white can play e4, protecting the d5 pawn, takes, takes, king e7, heading for d6, a4, king d6, rook fc1. So here I'm very confident that I can grind out a win here. My plan is either to bring my king to e3 or somewhere else in the center, like d3. There's also a plan of f4, so that if black takes and I take with the g-pawn, I'll have two central pawns that are both passes. And the other plan here is to play a5 in a moment, and that would undermine the pawns. So he'd have to play a move defending b6, and then I'd take twice and play rook b5, just blockading his pawns, and then execute the plan of running my king up to, say, d3 and playing f4. So it would be another 20 moves or so, but I feel like I've got there's no risk of me losing. But as I say, he resigned. He was rated 120 or 121 ECF. So I was aware of that just before the game and thought that maybe, as long as he hadn't prepared for me, I should win because of there being a 76-point difference in our ECF grades, which is usually enough. So our team won. We won 6-0 on that day. So I was very, very pleased with that. And I was also rather pleased that I had prepared one of the players on our team, and they had won fairly convincingly, I think. So in the next game that was on the Sunday, yesterday, our team pretty much had to win to keep any chances of getting promoted to the next division still active. And in this game, there was a tougher opposition. I was still on board too, and the way this league works, if you're white in one of the games, you're going to be black in the other. So I was black in this game against Chirag Gura. I hope that's how you pronounce the name. Who's 161 ECF and about 1650 FIDE, so that's about 500 points lower than I am. So I'd expected to win, but again, he could prepare me. And I spent the time before the match preparing 3 people on my team to play against their opponents. So I had no chance to look at what he plays. So I was a little bit nervous at the beginning. After d4, knight f6 is my solution to everything. Knight f3, so he is getting me out of any kind of mainline move after the more common c4, where black can play Budapest Gambit, Nimzo Indian, a lot of moves. The Benoni with c5. Here c5 is still playable, but it's not mainline. So I decided to play d5 and mirror, see what he was going to play. I'm happy with London systems, even though they are quite boring. But he now played c4. So we have a Queen's Gambit declined with e6. Here I'm fairly familiar with this position. Normally I just play Bishop e7 and castle if white plays a move like Knight c3 or Bishop g5. But here he played g3, which is what I used to do. And this is leading us to a Catalan. If black plays Bishop e7, castles, Knight bd7, black gets a comfortable position, but so does white, and I don't really like my opponents to be comfortable, so I took the pawn. And here, black is not winning or better or even really that level, but white needs to play quite accurately to maintain a slight advantage. And after Bishop g2, which is correct, I play one of the many moves available to black. There's so many moves here. Knight bd7, Knight c6, c6, Bishop e7. I think even a6 might be playable. So, yeah, a lot of moves. I played Knight c6. And here, for white to keep the advantage, Queen a4 is the move. Just going after the c4 pawn early. Knight d5 would have been my move. Queen takes pawn, Knight b6. So after the queen goes to b5, the mainline move is a6, but I don't really like doing that. I play bishop d7, queen b3, getting out of any kind of discovered attack, bishop e7, knight c3, castles, castles. Here it's about even. Black can play knight a5 to hit the queen. After queen c2, then maybe c5 can be played by black, with the idea of perhaps playing bishop c6, and the knight on a5 can go to c4. So that's not the only plan, and doesn't mean that white will allow it to happen. But I feel very comfortable in these positions, and white's advantage is very minimal. So that was what I was expecting to happen, because I thought he would have prepared. But after I played knight c6, he castles. And I had a game just like this in one of my tournaments, where I drew very, very quickly when I wanted to draw. Knight d5, and now if queen a4, white runs into problems with knight b6. So because he's castled, he hasn't had enough time to capture the pawn. So instead he played knight c3, which is a good move, develops. And if I take, white has a very good game after b takes c3. It solidifies the pawn on d4. White will have a very strong centre after playing e4. And also the b file is open, so rook b1 can be played. It's just not very pleasant for black, really. White has loads of pressure and will almost certainly win the pawn back on c4 after a while. So I played bishop e7. I'm perfectly happy if white captures, I'll take with the pawn. So a3, and the reason for a3 will be revealed in a moment, but I personally don't like it. I just think e4 is fine. Castles, and now e4. The reason is that he was worried earlier about if he played e4 previously, I could have played knight b4, and then after perhaps a3, I could then bring the knight to d3 and have a really strong knight on the d3 square. But I play knight b6. So he's wasted a move with a3 just to stop me manoeuvring the knight, which I don't think it was that big a deal, to be honest. Bishop e3. Again, just solidifying, he's developing. Nothing wrong with that at all. And again, what's annoying about these type of systems is the bishop, the light square bishop, the one on c8, is very hard to it's hard to find something to do with it in Frenches and Caro-Kann sometimes, also in Slavs and in Queen's Gambit, declined positions, or in this case it's Catalan sort of with taking the pawn. So first I make the other bishop look useful on f6. If he plays e5, he's weakened d5 forever, so I may be able to get a knight onto d5. He played rook c1, and now I finally discovered something I could do with my bishop. I want to put it on c6, so on the long diagonal, challenging his bishop. That means I need to move the knight on c6. So I do, move it to a5, and the idea is to play knight b3, hitting his rook and having my knight on a very good square. Knight a4, which is a move that prevents knight b3, really. If I play knight b3, he has knight takes b6, which leads to a rather uncomfortable position for black. So the best move according to the computer is taking the knight, queen takes, and then defending the a5 knight with c6. The queen there on d8 is protecting it. And I didn't like this position because the knight has nowhere to go. But I underestimated the next move white can play, which is after rook fd1, black has b5. And the queen now needs to retreat, knight b3. So what I didn't realise was the knight coming to b3 was a possibility because b5 not only attacks the queen but defends against the c4 pawn. Here I think it's practically winning for black. The computer gives it as about minus 0.8, so black's not quite a full pawn up yet, but I would argue that black is completely winning. So I missed that move of b5. Instead, I played bishop d7, so again, making my bishop useful. Here, I'd looked at knight c5, but I thought that bishop to c6 might be a good move for black. Again, I feel like my position is quite good, but the computer gives it as better than the move white played, which was knight takes knight. Now capturing towards the centre is advised with a takes. So the rook on a8 now has a life on the a file. Here he kicks my bishop with e5, so he didn't like the pressure being exerted on the d4 pawn. And also his bishop on g2 has got a more open diagonal. So I retreat, knight d2, attacks c4, and also the knight can come to e4 in the future. So b5 is played to protect the pawn. Queen g4. I hadn't looked at this at all. I'd been looking at more positional maneuvering with moves like queen e2 and rook fd1. Potentially also d5 being a possibility. But queen g4 has a bit of venom in it. Bishop h6 is a threat, threatening queen g7 mate, and my only move to stop it would be g6, leading to white winning the exchange by taking the f8 rook. So the moves I have, there's rook e8 followed by bishop f8 protecting against mate, but that leaves my bishop in a very passive position, and I really don't like having all my pieces on the back row. Therefore, I decided to play king h8. It's a very quiet looking move, but it just takes out all of white's initiative. And his next move, bishop e4, does attempt to continue on the attack. But here I just play bishop c6. Finally, somewhere good for my bishop. Now, my general theory is that if white has the queen and 3 minor pieces all around the king, then I do need to be worried about an attack. So I was looking at bishop to b1. I then theorized that knight b3 attacking the d2 knight and the c1 rook was a good way of swapping off. Then white only has a queen and 2 bishops, and I don't think that's enough to really have a strong enough attack on my king. So I was rather surprised when he played bishop takes bishop. That took out all the hard work I had to do to swap off pieces. Knight takes. I don't want to take with a pawn because then tripled pawns on the c-file is not ideal. Also, my knight is now gone away from the edge of the board and is influencing the centre. So rook fd1. Queen d5. Part of the reason for queen d5 is just to have a queen centralised, protect c4 as well. Because my plan is to play b4, but obviously I can't because the c4 pawn is being attacked if I do that. So the idea was to add a defender to c4, and if white wants to make any progress, he has to move the knight, in which case only the rook would be attacking c4. That means the queen defending it would be sufficient defense, so I could then push b4. And I was proven correct after knight e4, centralizing the knight, b4, takes. Here, bishop takes is an option, but I don't really see what my bishop is doing there. Instead, I take with the knight. The reason for this is to allow my knight to come to d3 if I so choose. Also, potentially, if his knight were on c3, I could play knight a2, swapping off knights. And finally, after I move my queen, I can play knight d5, which is the ideal square for my knight. So knight c3, and I just keep protecting the pawn. I keep an eye on the c4 pawn with queen c6. Knight e2, which I was not really expecting. I think that knight e4 might be a stronger move, but it may feel to him like he wasn't making any progress psychologically because his knight was just on e4. So knight e2, the idea I think is to play knight f4 and then maybe knight h5 threatening checkmate. But that is a tad slow. Knight d5. So now, if knight f4 are swap off knights, I want to keep swapping as I'm a pawn up. b3, which does look like a good move at first because it looks like I have to play b5, protecting the pawn, and then after he takes and I take, I'll just have double pawns on the c-file, which makes my pawn advantage not look like a pawn advantage. So that was his plan, but I have a crushing move now. What can I play as black to have a huge advantage? c3. Now it's a passed pawn, so white's in trouble. There's only two defenders of c3, but white only has two attackers. The move I'd looked at was bishop d2, not played in the game, but black has c2, attacking the rook, rook f1, bishop a3 going for the white rook, rook a1, bishop b2, takes, and here black is going to try and play c1 equals queen, and there's going to be two defenders of the c1 pawn of the c1 queen after it promotes, but white has three attackers on the c1 square. So I need an extra piece to control c1. White will blockade, most likely. Takes, rook a2. So white was able to blockade in this variation, but the plan is to play rook b2 and then rook b1, hitting c1 again. And eventually what may happen is that all the pieces will be practically swapped off, and there may only be queens left on the board. And with a pawn that advanced, black should easily win. So this was a potential variation that I looked at and liked. But the move that he played was rook c2, stopping c2. And now I play a logical follow-up. I want to protect the c3 pawn. What's the best protection? What's the best protector? What kind of piece is the best protector of a square or another piece? Yeah, it's always the weakest. It's the pawns, because who would dare tread where a pawn controls? If a queen goes to f5, for example, in this position, the pawn takes it. And a pawn is very brave because it fears no one. It's weaker than everything else, so that means that any exchange involving you taking a pawn wouldn't be very advantageous. So the g7 pawn is not afraid of the queen because the queen takes pawn, king takes. They've lost a queen. So if I can protect c3 with a pawn, none of white's pieces will ever take on c3 because they'd lose. They'd sacrifice themselves for just a pawn or two. So b5. And if white wants to prevent black playing b4, he'll have to play b4 himself, which is just pointless because bishop takes b4, and then maybe bishop a3 to b2, then b4 and b3 could be played. So queen e4 is played, b4. Now the pawn is cemented on c3. Knight f4. Okay, there's a pin on my queen, but I'm not too upset about it. Rook a3, attacking the b3 pawn. If I can get two passed pawns, that's even better than having one protected passer. Rook b1. And here, what I want to do is still have a protection on d5, still have two defenders of the knight, but I don't like my queen on c6. It's not defended, so that means I can't move my knight away, and I really want to swap pieces. So I play a move that makes my queen not a loose piece. It protects the queen, and also it's still defending d5 as well. And an added bonus is it keeps the pressure on white. The move is queen a8. It's a rather strange looking move, putting your queen in the corner, but it keeps the diagonal open, and also now there's a battery of queen and rook on the a file. So after queen d3, my best move may be rook a1 or rook a2, but I wanted to swap pieces. Knight takes knight, bishop takes, and here queen d5. So my queen's gone to d5 quite a few times. The reason for this is just to attack b3, and a8 is now free for the f8 rook to come to, doubling up on the a file. Queen c4, and here I think I make a game-changing blunder in this position. The computer gives this as best because it can calculate very, very well, but on a human level, it's a terrible move that I play here. Yeah, I play queen takes queen, which allows white to potentially have a passed pawn. And as you'll see in the game, I don't play this very well from here on. But the move which I'd considered but thought was maybe a bit slow was c6. And I saw it just completely paralysed white, which is the kind of move you want to play. But at the time, I was worried about bishop c1, rook a5, and I thought maybe white could just hold on to this position, but I think I was just quite tired, and I didn't really consider how powerful that c3 pawn was. A continuation which I'd seen was white taking the queen, because what else is white going to do? C takes, king f1, rook fa8, king e2, rook a2 swapping, king e3, and this was where my analysis in my head stopped, because I thought I'll never really be able to push c2 because white will always be able to eventually take it, and then my advantage is squandered. But what I missed was that, again, look, white can't move. The rook on b1 can't move. The bishop on c1 can't move. Only the white king can actually move anywhere. So I should just play f6, takes. I can't see what else white would do unless they play h4. If they move the f pawn, I can play rook to h2. So e5, takes, and now I'm threatening c2 because the white rook can't move to b2 because the bishop's attacking it on e5. So this is a one position. So I hadn't seen this far ahead, but I didn't need to. I had that c3 pawn, which was so powerful. So c6 was easily the best move I could have played. Instead, queen takes, pawn takes, rook fa8, d5. So white is now threatening d6. And at the time, I was quite tired, but I thought, nah, no worries, I'm fine. Rook a2, takes. And I'd considered d6, which was played. And then I realised, oh dear, this is really bad. White has a bishop on f4, which for some reason I forgot was defending d6. So I take it, and the reason that I'd realised this was such a terrible position was that white has a move which almost levels the game. Luckily, he didn't see it, but rook takes b4, and rook b8 is being threatened. So the continuation that I'd seen and was going to play was g5, pawn takes pawn, bishop f6, bishop retreats to e3, c2, I think c5 was the move I was thinking of. c5, yeah, c5. Then rook a1 check, king g2, queen, takes, d7. And here I realized that I had to give up the bishop again, because if I play rook d1 attacking d7, he has c6, and then he has two passes, which are probably stronger than my bishop. So I'd have to play rook takes c5, check, king g7, queen takes. And now this is very, very hard to win. If white plays it correctly, it should be a draw, but I wouldn't really think that my opponent would play this entirely correctly, because he's 1630 or 1650, which is, I know, it's a bit harsh of me to say this. It's a bit of a judgment call. But long experience has taught, this isn't just a prejudice, long experience has taught me that generally players who are under about 2000 strength are not that good at the end game. They can be excellent in the middle game and the opening. They can be 2100 strength, but once you get them to the end game, they might not know how to play it. So I would have played on and tried to win, being a pawn up, but I wouldn't be 100% sure that I could win. I would think that there's about maybe a 20% chance to draw. But if I was playing someone my own level, I would definitely think it would be a draw. I'd still play on, because I like playing on, but I wouldn't have much hope of winning. Anyway, going back to the game, there's a lot of variations here. After I take, he now takes, right, out of instinct, because he has a passed pawn. c2, this is the one move that seems to keep my advantage as a Zwischenzug. And I have an excellent move after rook takes b4. So what would you play as black if it was your turn here? There's only one move that really gives black any advantage, and that is bishop takes d6. It's crazy, and it is putting the bishop on prise, and it's forking white's pieces and defending against checkmate. So it's doing so many different things, which is why I love these kind of multi-purpose moves. If c5, let's say, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes, queen. And here it's a very easy win after a simple move like h6. So bishop d6 is just winning pretty much on the spot here. Obviously, if bishop takes d6, I have c1 equals queen, which is probably a better continuation, actually, as white has the threat of checkmate. But again, I have h6 at any point, and I've defended against all of white's potential attacks. So rook takes b4 is not really an option. And I have two different moves that I'd worked out in my head. The move not played in the game is rook e1. This allows me to play bishop takes d6 again, takes, b3. So the idea is to play b2 and b1 equals queen. The only way white can really prevent this is bishop e5, b2, sacrifice on b2. But the problem is, whatever white moves, yes, I think every single one of white's legal moves will result in me playing rook b1, winning. So even if white does rook takes e6, I still have rook b1 check, and then I'll take white's rook. So if king g2, for example, rook b1, and wherever white's rook moves, apart from rook takes e6, I'm going to make a queen next move. So this is very, very easy to win. So rook e1 can't really be played. Instead, the most difficult is rook c1, which he played. Now there is the threat of d takes e7. So I played bishop d8, just preventing any pawn promotions. Bishop f6 was okay, but I was slightly worried about c5, c6, c7, c8 equals queen. c5, b3. And here, again, there's a few combinations here. If c6, there's b2, c7, and this is partly why I didn't play bishop f6, is that after takes, if the bishop was on f6, I'd have to play rook c8, and then d7 would win for white. Even though black's a rook up, white would have c8 equals queen, an unanswerable threat. But here, takes, rook a8, bishop, king g2, let's say, rook c8, bishop f4, and here I can just take the pawn, because after takes, I make a queen. So I'd work this out, but the rather more fun variation which was played was bishop e5, and here the idea is that if I play b2, white can sacrifice on b2 and then maybe play king g2, which would make it so that rook b1 would be answered by rook takes c2. So let's see. If b2 here, takes, king g2, and now how is black making progress? The annoying thing is that white still has those two passed pawns, which are very, very dangerous. So perhaps white might even be a little better here, just from a cursory glance. King g8, c6. Yeah, this isn't looking very good for me. Rook, whoops. Yeah, rook. Whoops, sorry. b2. So the move I'm thinking of was rook there, then c7, and what's the move? Takes, rook a8, takes, rook c8, and again I think it's going to be a case of it being 3 pawns against 4, which is probably a draw, for example. So this position is probably drawn, but again I play on. So that's not an ideal setup, and black has to play very, very accurately. So after bishop e5, I decide that I'm not going to push my pawn. The c2 pawn is protected, and the c1 rook is almost useless here, being just a blockader. So I play rook a5, bishop d4, protecting the pawn. And here I have the rather nice move of rook takes c5. If bishop takes, I have b2. Then if he defends the rook and attacks the pawn, I have b1 equals queen, winning the game. So he played bishop b2, rook d5, bishop a3, rook takes pawn. Same reason, I can play b2, b1 equals queen. So king f1, rook d1 check, king e2, and here I try to deflect his bishop with bishop e7. If he plays bishop takes e7, I have rook takes c1. And if he plays rook takes d1, I can take his rook with check and then play bishop takes a3, winning the game. So bishop b2, bishop f6. And here, if he plays bishop a3, I have rook takes c1, he recaptures, and now there's b2. Takes, with c1 queen being the next move, winning the game. So unfortunately, he had to play rook takes d1, and here I don't know, maybe I was feeling a bit vindictive and frustrated with how I'd almost blown my chances of winning this game. So I played the move d1, pawn takes equals bishop, partly because I'd been looking at some puzzles which involved under promotion, and also I thought that how often do you promote to a bishop? It's probably the least promoted piece. So after king takes bishop, I have bishop takes b2, king d2, and after f5, my opponent resigned. A very, very simple win ahead of me. All I have to do after king d3 to keep my pawn on b3 protected is just to play bishop f6. Now king c4 wouldn't be a good move. And yeah, this is just easy to win. I'll play b2, the king has to stay on b1 forever, and I can use my 4 pawns against 3 pawns to create another passed pawn somewhere on the king side. So very easy win. So overall, I was quite happy with this weekend. Most of the players that I prepared before their games did quite well. I think there was one loss and several wins. And for my own games, I was originally afraid of someone preparing against me and perhaps trying to knock me off balance a little with a rarely seen move. But it turned out that my book knowledge was enough to keep an advantage, or at least keep me in familiar territory, and be able to outplay them in the middle game. And then going into an end game, I could rely on technique to win. So it's very, very fun playing at the 4NCL. I'd recommend it. You get a couple of games with a long time control for those of you who like to think during your games. But not only that, you get to have a lot of fun with your team and with other people there. There's a lot of social activities there. So it's just a nice thing to do at the weekend. The only annoying thing is if you live in London like I do, travelling to Telford, which is about a 3-hour drive away, is a very long process. So anyway, that's my weekend. I hope you had a nice weekend as well. Comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.